Hi guys, and welcome to the Rubbin' is Racing Fantasy NASCAR show for Daily Fantasy NASCAR. I'm Sean Big Papa Williams. This is Jamie, the Learjet Lear, and we are coming at you with our first NASCAR Daily show. Just to give you guys a brief run, as always, the show is sponsored by FantasyDonks.com. And we remind you to check out FantasyDonks.com for all the information you need to start playing daily fantasy sports. We cover all the sports now, and hopefully we have all the information you need. And if we don't, just feel free to ask us a question, and we'll answer any questions you guys have. But without further ado, let's get into NASCAR for this week. And let's start off by thanking DraftKings for finally being the first site to offer NASCAR. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That's a new thing, and so there are no experts right now at NASCAR. We're just doing all the work for you. We went through, we looked at the qualifying list, we watched the practice races this morning, and we're going to tell you who the drivers are that we like this week and who we would avoid. And let's first talk about the DraftKings scoring, because that's the most important thing when you're playing daily fantasy, is knowing how exactly the contests you're playing are scored. And on DraftKings, basically the way they break this down is they give a lot of emphasis to point differential. Now, if, for example, if your race car driver starts first but then finishes 43rd, he finishes with a negative 43 in place differential. So you need to pay attention to where people qualify, and because that's going to be important to where they finish. Like a guy that underqualifies, that has the potential to finish top 5, can get you a lot of points. A guy that's overqualified, that finishes in the bottom of the pack, can lose you a lot of points, and that's just awful. They also offer 0.5 points for the fastest laps, and you get 0.25s for laps led. So picking one of the leaders, like for example Matt Kenseth, who's qualified first, odds are you're going to get at least a few points at the beginning of the race for him leading laps, and probably having the fastest lap, being out in the clean air. Wouldn't you agree, Lear?
I definitely would. You know, he's obviously qualified first, so he's definitely going to get some laps led underneath his belt. The biggest thing with him is this is a 600-mile race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, so the percentages of him staying up front, leading laps, getting you those points are few and far between. So if it's somebody that you want to put on your team this week, I'd definitely be conscientious of that aspect of it for sure.
Right on. The other way you can score on DraftKings, of course, is the finishing position, and that ranks anywhere from 1 to last place to 46. Everybody gets a point. Everybody gets some points. That really doesn't matter as much in the grand scheme of things. Like it's harder to predict, but what you're going to want to avoid is the negative players. So if you can avoid the wreck, you're going to cash probably. And if there is a wreck, and if you can avoid somebody that falls back significantly, you should be able to cash this weekend. I will tell you this much: with NASCAR being the first week, I wouldn't play any cash game lineups. I would only throw a couple GPP darts just to get a feel for what a tournament in NASCAR is, how the scoring goes down, and I would limit my bankroll exposure this week just because it's a new sport and we don't know exactly how it's going to go down. Like we can only use our best guesses. So without further ado, let's talk about the race this weekend specifically and the track. We are at Charlotte this week for the Coca-Cola 400. Lear will tell you a little bit about the track type and the conditions for this week.
All right. Charlotte Motor Speedway is obviously in Charlotte, North Carolina. The track is a 1.5 mile track. The NASCAR circuit, they race this track quite a bit. It's through a lot of different cities within the country. On the difference basically between this track and some of the other 1.5 mile tracks that are out there is that this has 24-degree banking in all of the turns. So they carry a lot more speed in the corners. So this is going to have a little bit of passing too in the corners, more than some of the other tracks that are around the country. But these guys are reaching speeds of, like Matt Kenseth today, qualified at 192 miles an hour. So, you know, it's going to be really key to pick the guys that, you know, somewhere in there that are going to finish qualifying towards the middle, towards the late, that have really good opportunity to move up and basically finish the race in the first couple of spots. But Charlotte Motor Speedway, this is the second race in 2 consecutive weeks. Last week they raced there for the All-Star race, and this week is the 600. It's going to be a Sunday race, so it's going to have a little bit of daytime in it, along with the nighttime. So, when it starts, it's going to be a little bit slower in speeds, but once the night turns and the temperatures get cooler, the speeds will go up because the tires will get harder, and they'll be able to obviously move a lot faster than what they were previously in the race. So thus, you're going to get a lot more points for when people pass, when they pass people, because you get points for that in DraftKings scoring. And then also too, those guys that get up towards the front, depending on how many restarts, if we have some with some wrecks mixed in there, because that's guaranteed. We're probably at least going to have one. Those guys up there towards the front will get obviously points for leading laps for you. So
Lear, with the track conditions this week, would you say that the people at the front of the pack are extremely likely to keep the lead and lead the laps and be the fastest cars early, but once the track cools down, a lot of the people in the back and in the middle can move up then? Like, is that how you see this race?
Yeah, I definitely foresee it going, towards that direction as far as how the race will portray itself out during the duration of it. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for guys for points right up front, the guys that qualified within the top 10, you're going to get some points there because they'll be able to move in and out. But later towards the race, those guys that qualified later, that are going to start later, are obviously going to have the best opportunity to move up throughout the duration of the race and get those points for passing, and then also potentially, winning the race.
As long as they can avoid a pile up.
Exactly.
All right. So just because we want to do some of the work for you, let's go ahead and talk about the top 10 qualifiers, and we'll talk about a little bit about their speeder time and the make of them and the make that they're driving behind. First, we had Matt Kenseth qualify, and he qualified 0.2 seconds ahead of the rest of the field in qualifying. He's in a Toyota car. You're going to see a lot of Toyota cars here at the top. Now, some analysts will tell you that the reason why you're going to see the Toyota cars is because they specifically set up their cars for qualifying, and they'll fall off a little bit in practice. And we saw a little bit of that today in the practice laps. So I'm leaning a little bit more towards that side. But when you see how dominant the Toyotas were in qualifying, you're going to probably want to have at least a Toyota car in your lineup, and one of these guys is my guess. Second qualifying was Joey Logano in the Ford. We had Carl Edwards qualify right behind him in a Toyota. Greg Biffle qualified fourth in the Ford. Denny Hamlin qualified fifth in a Toyota. A lot of people are liking Denny Hamlin this week.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he won last week's race, so he's got that going for him. He qualified high within the qualifying round. So, obviously with the momentum from last week, winning here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway during the All-Star race, it's a little different as far as the race is concerned. In the All-Star race, they do segments. Where this is just a consistent race from start to end. So, it's going to be all about him staying up front and, avoiding the wrecks, and then also, having good pit stops. These races also depend on how many pit stops that these guys have and the efficiency that these pit crews have as well. Because, the more efficient that they are in the pit, the better the starting position that they have when they restart the race. So
well, and the pit stops really matter when you're talking about place differential, right? A bad pit stop can mean the difference in the world. Like you could go, a real bad one, you go down a lap, right? Yeah. A mediocre bad one, and you're down 5-10 seconds, and you've lost 15 spots on the track. Right. So that's an important thing as well, and which is why a lot of people like Kenseth, because he, as the top qualifier, has the best position on pit row, the number one position for this track, which there is a lot of confusion along pit row with this race having. But the funny thing about Denny Hamlin is he's actually never won the Coca-Cola 600. So keep that in mind. He does well at the shootout style races where they're in segments, but he hasn't won this at this track before. In this race.
One point I wanted to also kind of double back on that with you is you were just talking about people qualifying and then their pit areas too on the racetrack. That also is very huge when it comes to being efficient in your pit, because if you're bottled up in the middle or towards the end, right when you get done with your pit stop and you're coming back out to head back on the track, you still got guys coming behind you that can potentially run into you, do all that. So the better qualifying spot you have, the better pit area that you have as far as the racetrack goes, that means that you have less traffic up up there towards the front if he qualified up front. So that's also a positive for you in choosing your lineup as well.
Yeah. The sixth qualifier was Brad Keselowski in the Ford, and we had David Reagan in the Toyota, lots of Toyotas at the top. And then finally you get to the pack of Chevys with Kevin Harvick in eighth, Kyle Larson in the Chevy in ninth, and Martin Truex Jr. in the Chevy in 10th. Now, practice basically today, just to give you an update, most of the guys, this is where you really see whether or not their car is built for speed and how they're built on the track. But you have to use the way the scoring system is. You need to use qualifying along with the practice positions and how they finish and how they looked in practice and put together your best lineup. So just to give you the top 5 today in practice, because I think that's important, Kurt Busch was the fastest today and in practice, followed by Matt Kenseth, who once again up near the top. Right. Then Jimmy Johnson, David Reagan, and I can't even read my own handwriting who was 5th. So we'll have to skip that for right now. And we'll just move on right to the next thing, which is who we like this week, who's burning rubber. It's called our burning rubber segment.
It's Keselowski.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it was Keselowski and 5th. I apparently could not read my own writing. It happens. So now let's move on to the who's burning rubber segment of our show, and that's who we like this week. First pick this week for a lot of people is that of Kevin Harvick. He's $14,200 on DraftKings. He's the most expensive driver. But with that, Kevin Harvick has won 2 of the last 4 races at this track. He's also finished second behind Jimmy Johnson 3 times this year on the 1.5-mile tracks. What do you think of Kevin Harvick this week? Let's
be honest, guys. So far this year in 2015, Kevin Harvick is on fire. The guy's, obviously always finishing in the top 10, top 5. And he just has a really good car week in, week out. He's got a great team. The only bad part about Kevin Harvick, especially in our formats, is the guy costs a lot of money, Mm-hmm. So, if you want the guy, awesome. You're going to have to pay for the guy. But other than that, the guy is having a great season. He's definitely going to contend this year for the Cup. So, like I said, if he's a guy that you really, really want, go after him. But just be cognizant of the fact you're going to pay for him. And know you're going to have to reach. Later on in the segment, we'll be on DraftKings with both of our computers, and we'll do some lineups, and we'll talk to you about our thought process going through setting a lineup. Just know that when you play the guy that's the most expensive, you have to sacrifice your lineup elsewhere. Somewhere, for sure. And one of the things that is interesting that people have talked about with sacrificing their lineups here, and I could have talked about it scoring, but I wanted to give you more of a point of reference here, is some people are talking about in the industry that it would actually make more sense for you to take, so you can buy the studs, to take one of the guys that qualified near the bottom of the pack. And by doing so, if you take one of the bottom guys, they're not going to lose you points. The only possibility is they gain you points, right, in the pass differential, which is the biggest point booster. Yeah. They're not going to lead you any laps. They're not going to be the fastest, right? But there's that chance that they don't lose any points, and that 0 is way better off than somebody that paid up. Well, somebody that paid up for a Larson or a Reagan that qualified way high and may end up finishing 43rd, right? For sure. You're talking about a difference of losing 30 points, right, versus a 0. Right. And I'd rather take a 0 any day of the week and be able to buy one of the studs than I would to risk a negative 30. But and for the GPPs this week, I think most likely the winner is going to be somebody that picks everyone that moves up, right? That's just how the GPPs work. The second driver we have under the burning rubber segment that we love this week is that of Jimmy Johnson. I mean, like I said when we were talking about Harvick, he has 3 wins this year already on the 1.5-mile track. As Lear said, basically there's Harvick, there's Jimmy Johnson, and then there's everyone else in NASCAR so far this season. The Jimmy Johnson play is a good one. He is $13,200. He's the second most expensive, but the $1,000 you save there does allow you to buy does allow you to move up significantly and buy a better driver in the middle of the pack or even towards the bottom of the pack. And Jimmy Johnson, by the way, he won 3 weeks ago at Kansas Speedway, which is also a 1.5-mile track. Now that win was based off of a rain delay. You know, a few things happening. I don't foresee that happening this week in this Charlotte race. But Jimmy Johnson, another driver, like Big Papa just said, the guy has been amazing so far this year, and he's amazing year in, year out.
Well, he's won this track 4 times, like
exactly.
run this race 4 times. Like that's the most out of anyone in the field by a long shot. I mean, Casey Kane has 3, Gordon has 3.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, Jimmy Johnson just owns this track traditionally. So if you're looking to like maybe get away from Harvick, save 1,000, that would be a
Pick up
route.
a guy down lower that you know you could use that $1,000 difference on.
Johnson's definitely a sexy pick there.
Yeah.
And like we said a little bit earlier, Hamlin is a sexy pick off the win last week. His qualifying spot's pretty nice. Like there is the risk that he can fall back, but that's the same with everybody. He's only 10,900. It's a really good price tag to be able to put somebody of that caliber that just won on this track last week into your lineup. I really like that. My only concern here is I think several people at that price tag will be on Hamlin.
Yeah, so your percentages of owned are going to be a lot larger than, you know, Harvick or Jimmy Johnson. So.
And then we have, like, both of us, it is hilarious that we both agreed on this pre-show, but both of our sleeper picks this week is Casey Kane. He underqualified at, what, 33rd position?
Yeah, 33rd position. The guy won the All-Star race last year in 2014, so he knows how to drive on this track. He also is a Hendrick driver, which obviously anybody in NASCAR knows that the 4 for Hendricks, that would be Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt, and Casey Kane. Those 4 guys with the Hendrick motors that they have, you know, strategically day in, day out, race in, race out, always have a advantage with the Hendrick motors. And with him, I mean, the guy's won the race. He qualified 33rd. I mean, the guy has huge potential as far as points go for DraftKings to get you a lot of points to finish up in the top 10 to top 5 and maybe even win this race. And you know, a lot of people too at his price point. I can't remember what his price point was.
10,100. Yeah.
So 10,100. You know, he might be a low percentage owned guy, but you taking that guy, taking him as a sleeper this week. You know, I think he definitely would pay out for you for sure. See, with qualifying 33rd.
That's one thing that Lear and I like differ on. I think his ownership percentage is maybe through the roof. I think that that's going to essentially give you a free roll if it is through the roof. If not, and people are staying away from him, awesome, we can take advantage there. As we've said before, he has 3 previous wins in this race. Like, so he does well on this track. He likes racing here. I look for him to have a great weekend this weekend. Now that we finished that segment, let's move on to the next segment, which is who's headed to the garage. These are guys that we don't like this week, regardless of the price point. It's either their price too high or we don't like where they qualified. They have too much of a risk to lose you a lot of points. And the first driver that we have for you on that list is Larson. Like, look, he qualified too high. He qualified in 9th position, and I just don't see him finishing in the top 10. I see him more likely finishing top 25, maybe top 30.
Maybe. Maybe.
Right.
And he's on a smaller team. I mean, the guy just doesn't have the equipment just like the other drivers. So, you know, he doesn't have the availability and the resources like the other drivers to finish within that top 10 and stay there. One, he's probably not going to lead the lap, but he's also probably not going to be passing very many people. He's the one that's going to be getting past most majority of the race.
And if you look at the times today in practice, that was indeed
indicative of what's going to take place tomorrow. Absolutely.
The next one is Dylan. He qualified 11th. Once again, practice today, slow laps. It's just these guys qualify too high. There's too much of a propensity, too much of a risk for them to fall back. And when they fall back, that's costing you 1 point apiece. Like every time they fall. I just don't like him. I also a name that's very popular in the sport that I don't like. I think he overqualified here is David Reagan.
Yeah, for sure. The guy is in the number 55 Aaron's Dream Team car. You know, it's a Waltrip Racing vehicle. Now he obviously has some resources behind him to have a decent car, but the guy, you know, as far as a driver, you know, he can have a good qualifying time. but I just have not seen the results so far this year to warrant me to want to pick him as far as one of my drivers on my DraftKings team. Now, granted, his amount that he's going to cost on DraftKings is going to be significantly lower than some of these other top guys that we've talked about.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, wanting to get points and you want to win this money, right? That's why you're entering this contest.
That's why we all enter.
Exactly. You don't want to take guys like this. So I would definitely avoid that guy because he's going to be going to the garage. I'll tell you that.
All right. Now that we got the go into the garage segment out of the way, we appreciate your patience with us and trying some new stuff out. Like, we're going to move on to what's called, we'll just call it the lug nut segment, where we're both in the lug nut contest on DraftKings, and we're both just going to put together a team that we're talking about. Since we've been talking about what Harvick does to your team, I'll be talking about putting together a Harvick team, and Lear will be talking about putting together a different team using a little bit more sneaky start. So let's just go ahead and start off. I've got Kevin Harvick here at 14-2. You already know how much I love Casey Keynes today, so we're going to go ahead and add him at 10-1, right? So essentially that leaves me 8,566 per driver remaining. I need 3 more drivers. Now the strategy here is, like, I could afford or buy David Reagan. I'm in that group, the Austin Dillon, but those are guys that we decided we wanted to avoid because of their potential. I think what I'm going to do here is try to reach down, take one of the guys that might hopefully under maybe a caution lead a lap, get me a couple of dirty points that way. But he's not going to cost me any points by losing any ground. I think we can go with safely here. Let me try to, I want to make sure I'm picking the right one, guys. Give me a second. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and take JJ Yeley in the Hope for Warriors car, just because he qualified last. He was last in practice, but I know he's not going to cost. Actually, he's too expensive. I'm going to go ahead and take De Benedetto. He's cheaper. I saved $200 more by taking De Benedetto, and he's going to finish at least 2 spots better according to all the data we have. So now that I've saved up, I'm back to the 9,200. Now, Lear's not going to go with this philosophy, so you're going to get a different look. But this is what we're going to call the stud-dud philosophy. I may even throw one more dud on here and stud up and just hope to just crush it. What would the other stud be that I could go with?
One thing that you're looking for in this strategy that Pop is using is, obviously, he's taken one of the stud drivers that are available on the site. So when it comes down to filling the rest of your roster with your 5 drivers, you're going to have to pick some ponies that are way back in the pack.
Yeah.
But guys that have potential. I mean, that's what you're basically looking for, and the ability to gain points, which is going to in turn win you the contest.
Yep. And that's the goal with these. And see, since we're playing a GPP, I'm not a fan of in GPPs ever trying to be safe. Like, you kind of need to grab them and go for it, because
let's be honest here, because you're going to be playing against a pretty significant amount of people as far as the contest goes. So there's going to have to be something within your lineup that's going to have to differentiate you from the rest of the crowd.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, guys, like, when we say, like, take a little bit of risk, like, I'm not saying be stupid with it.
Sure.
And the way this scoring breaks down, I'm not sure that it is foolish to do a stud-dud lineup. Like, now, that's why I told you earlier, like, let's limit our exposure this week. We're not going to spend too much of our bankroll. But, like, for example, on this $5 entry in this GPP, there's 1,150 people. I'm going to try a stud-dud lineup. If it doesn't work, worst case scenario, I'm out $5, right? Like, so but if it hits, I have a potential to have a huge payday.
Right.
So, all right. So the other driver we're gonna put on here that we're gonna dud it again, and I'm gonna go ahead and take I'll take Kennedy. Is he cheap enough? I think he is. Let's find him. He's not at the bottom of the page. Nice, 76. I'll just pay the 75 for Yelly there. And that
You know why? Because it's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, and
And what car is he driving?
I believe he's a remember car, right?
Yeah.
Yep. To remember fallen veterans. All right, now with doing the studs and duds by taking Yelly and Di Benedetto, I'm terrible with names. Sorry about that, guys. It gives me the option then to play Hamlin, Edwards, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., or Larson. We already said we didn't like Larson. I've also got Boyer in the mix, McMurray, Tony Stewart, Ryan Newman. Out of that group later, who do you think's the best pick is?
Well, because one of those guys I have on my team, I'm not going to give you that guy. But I would say out of the remaining amount of money that you have, $10,900, why not pick the guy that won last week?
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. Let's roll Denny Hamlin. And basically that leaves us Harvick and Hamlin up at the top of the pack.
Right.
And we're banking on them to lead laps, to be the fastest, and where they're going to finish. We've got Casey Kane as our mover.
Right.
And we've got two guys that we know can't really screw us because of how low they qualified. They really only have the potential to move up, which I think is a good thing. I don't think they will, but remember, we're going for no negative points here with this lineup. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that in. If you want to steal it, go ahead. If you want to change it a little bit, that's what I'd recommend. Feel free to watch my team in the lug nut, root me on, cheer me on. Hopefully it does well. And now let's talk about Lear's team. Oh, I can see he's already started off with Casey Kane as well.
Of course. Casey Kane is my driver this week to take down this Coca-Cola.
Wow,
Coca-Cola
33rd to first. That's bold, sir. Bold. I hope so.
So, he qualified 33rd. Like I said before in the earlier segment, the guy just has the equipment. He's won this race before, as far as the racetrack is concerned. And he's 33rd, so he has, as far as qualifying, so he has the opportunity to just move up and take advantage of him being starting 33rd. So I have him going as my first person on my team. Second person, we're going to stick within the family here and go with Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. is right now in the standings. He's within the top 5 as far as that goes. He's not crazy expensive. He's $11,800. He's going to be consistent throughout the whole race. As far as qualifying, he qualified, I believe it was 16th. I'm sorry, 15th. He qualified 15th. Yep. So he's going to be right there in the middle of the pack. So he's going to have a lot of opportunity to move up, a little bit of move back.
Now, Leo, let me ask you a question. Now, with a guy that's as famous and as popular as Dale Earnhardt Jr., do you worry that his ownership percentage for who he is as a driver is going to be too high?
Yeah, it's going to be astronomical because, the guy, let's face it, his father is the face of NASCAR. So, obviously, as far as the contest goes, he's going to be highly owned, but I feel that this is just going to be a player that is going to get you points, but even if other people take him, at least you're going to be on the same playing field with all these other players instead of being down here and trying to make that ground up. So
sometimes I like to fade those guys. This is this is why we like to talk this strategy and show us putting in a lineup so you know exactly what the thought process is. Lear's on that bandwagon. I'm on the fade train there, just like I'm on the fade train of putting together what would be a comprehensive lineup and went for the stud dud approach. Now, I will, just to be honest, I do have other lineups and other contests in NASCAR. I will do the comprehensive approach in some of those lineups in the smaller tournaments. Some of them I'll also do different stud and duds. These aren't the only lineups we're putting in, people. We just want to put these lineups in, give you an idea of the thought process that goes behind it and how you should be thinking and kind of see us go through and putting together a lineup.
My third driver on my list is going to be Kyle Busch. The guy's coming back from breaking his leg. He basically qualified today with one of the faster times on the track. He's got one of the better cars. His team being Toyota, also with having the coach as his owner.
Plus it's fun to cheer the Skittles car going around the track.
He's going to be in the Skittles car this week. Bright red, you can't miss him. But as far as that goes, we all know Kyle has a history of being a winner within the circuit of NASCAR. So he has plenty of opportunity, just like any other driver. And I believe
he's one of those fast Toyotas this week that we talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, he came in with the 6th fastest time today in practice. That's great. It shows that his car is ready to run on Sunday.
And he's 17th as far as the starting position, qualifying.
So he has the ability to move up. Like according to the practice today, he should at least move up 11 spots. That's 11 free points. I like that play, Lear. Who's your next one?
Next one is going to be Casey Mears.
Okay.
Now, because I took Casey Kane, who's 10,100, Dale Earnhardt, who's 11,800, and Kyle Busch, who's 10,300, I got to pick a driver somewhere down the lower of the list to fill in that void to make this $50,000 limit work. So I took Casey Mears because, one, the guy is he's been a driver in NASCAR for a very long time. He's also been at this track multiple times, and he's qualified 34th. So he definitely has opportunity to move up and get you points that way.
And at practice today, he finished the 19th fastest lap.
Right. So you know, he has that from where he's going to be starting to where he went today as far as practicing. You know, he's going to have that opportunity to move up and get you points as far as passing too.
Right on. So who do we got for the final pick? Have you decided yet, or are you still working on it?
Final one that works within the budget, and maybe because my first name is Jamie, but I'm taking Jamie McMurray as my number 5. Jamie McMurray is within the top 10 as far as standings overall for the 2015 for right now. He's got 4 top 10s, 2 top 5s. And, you know, with this track, he finished 16th last week in the All-Star race. So he's going to be up there as far as, you know, finishing the race within at least hopefully the top 10, get you some points that way. And not only that, but I believe
he qualified 22nd,
correct.
And today he was running laps at the 7th fastest pace.
So there you go.
Like,
I mean,
22-7. Like the way Lear approached this is probably the best way. I just wanted to give you a studs duds approach, and I would like my other lineups are going to be much more similar to that one that Lear put together. That's really smart when you use where they qualified at, what they played during practice today. Like, it's important to see that differential. Like, if you're going to pick a guy at the top, you want him to stay at the top during practices after qualifying.
Right.
If you're going to pick somebody, you want a guy that underqualified, not a guy that overqualified. This point differential is going to be a huge thing. And without further ado, we're going to get this done, wrapped up, edited, posted, so you all can enjoy it. Hopefully, if we don't make any money, we hope it's you that's making the money. Come back and see us. Remember to support FantasyDonks.com. I'm Sean Big Papa Williams. This is Jamie, the Learjet Lear, saying peace, good luck, make some money, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend, everybody.